Hello, and welcome to another episode of The End of the Search. This one I call it Seeing Through Instead of Buying Into. It's basically a question someone asked me on the Spanish channel. And what I will do is I read the question, then I'll give you the answer that I wrote, and then I'll elaborate a bit on it. And the question is, Hi Nick, I wanted to tell you about something I'm experiencing physically. It is like a digestive discomfort that comes and goes, and it seems very related to nerves. Although certain foods might also be a factor, I am not sure. It is strange because everything is fine at work and at home too. However, my mind is always on edge, my stomach, my intestines. There's something there in the center of my body that makes me feel unwell. If I thought it was purely physical or chemical, I wouldn't mention it. But I've had some things happen in other parts of my body with the corresponding medical test and everything turning out to be nothing. I feel like there's an internal struggle between control and lack of control. But on a conscious or visible level, I don't know exactly what's going to get out of control if everything should be fine and calm. Is there something you could tell me? Thanks. And then here's the answer or the comment that came through. On a physical level, if you're hungry, you eat. If you're sleepy, you sleep. If you're cold, you put on warm clothes, and so on. If there's physical pain, you address it. The thing is, you're trying to find causes to make sense of the experience you're having. If there's physical pain and tests have been done and everything comes back normal, then there is simply physical pain, end of story. The question is whether you believe you are that separate individual and therefore what's happening in the world of appearances can somehow distract you and make you suffer. Here, we're not focusing on that physical aspect. However, the physical aspect is addressed on its own according to the script you are living. Therefore, you see how life unfolds through you, while at all times observing all those movements as just that, movement that arises, that have different forms, different appearances, but what you are in essence remains intact. When you're sleeping and dreaming, if you forget that you are the mind dreaming the dream and believe that you are the individual in the dream, all sorts of questions can arise in the dream, like the one you're asking. Trying to answer the question in the dream, along with everything you do in the dream, continues to overlook the fact that you are the mind dreaming the dream. Therefore, I repeat, the question you ask is simply experiences, or you could say a manifestation in the world of appearances, like the body itself. But the question is, who or what are you really? You are the background, the space in which that you, quote unquote, seems to appear with all its different conditions. When the awareness of what you are is established, all questions fall away of their own accord. And I repeat, as I began this commentary, if you are hungry, you eat if you can eat. If you're cold, you put on a coat if you can put on a coat. If you're sleepy, you sleep if you can sleep. And in your case, if there is a physical pain, it is addressed, if it can be addressed. But these are only manifestations in form. Don't let the mind draw attention to the manifestations through interpretation. Simply don't lose sight of the fact that you are the underlying reality. And this isn't a conceptual understanding, it is simply where the message constantly points so that the world of appearances seems to be a distraction. Let me make a stop because the person continued with another comment. As you can see, the issue here is that the person is in the mind, first of all, believing it is a separate individual, and then what seems to be happening in the world of appearances is distracting from the fact that he is the background in which everything seems to appear and disappear, which is where these videos are pointing to. Now, clearly says that if an issue comes up, the issue is addressed. But remember, the issue is addressed according to the journey the person is supposed to, the quote-unquote person is supposed to travel, so to speak. In other words, if you get sick, you notice that the response to that comes out immediately, whether it's to seek help in a particular way like the person did, or maybe do nothing, I don't know, because it's always happening or organically. But when you believe you're the separate entity, then all of the appearances seems to become a distraction, and then when something happens, there's the fear of what could happen to me. What does it mean? And all of that is mind stuff, you see. When you know the fact that you are, well, events will appearance or seem to appear in the world of appearances. The body will go through whatever experiences have to go through, but you live through that with a sense of peace, with a recognition that you are, which is exactly what these videos are pointing to. All these questions about what does it mean, what does that mean, I don't know. We don't know any of that. But what needs to be known, it's immediately known by the fact that you are. So once again, notice that how the attention is trying to be drawn to the effects of the dream, and we're bringing back the attention to the cause. And again, we're not denying the experience of the dream, but we're pointing to the fact that the effects in the dreams takes care of themselves. Why? Because the cause is not happening in the dream, it's happening in that which supposedly projects all of this, and that takes care of itself. And we're pointing to the fact that you are that, you see. Otherwise, you get caught up in the details in the dream and forget it. There's nothing we can do. You're going to be running in circles because the mind always come up with new answers, new answers, which are not really answers at all. But you know, it always come up with suggestion what it could be or whatever. Always trying to protect this sense of identity, and that's when the fear arises, and that it's related to the next question the person asks when it replies with, I just don't think there's anything to be done, or at least not for now. What is clear is that fear appears, and I don't know why, and it affects me physically, the world of appearances. But as you rightly say, the key is not to get stuck in the world, but of course I am not the one who really decides. What a mess. Yeah, that's the paradox. The paradox is that I can suggest don't believe the content of the mind, but that's not going to happen because I'm saying it. It just happens because if that's what's supposed to happen in your script. Now, here's the comment that I made regarding his second question. I said, fear will always appear as long as you believe you are this separate individual, given that feeling or sense of being separate is one of limitation. That is, this I feels like a fragile speck of dust, and the threatening world is separate from me. However, when a feeling arises, whatever it may be, stripped of meaning, it is just that, and like everything, it appears and disappears. Meanwhile, notice that whatever needs attention, it is addressed, as you have already done with the medical test. If something is found, do what is possible. If nothing is found, then live as we always have, with or without pain. But I repeat, by stripping it of meaning, always being aware that I am, there is no suffering, only sensation. Again, the person talks about a sensation, he calls it or labels it fear, but is there fear or so? Yeah, as long as you believe you're a separate individual, all these feelings and sensation is going to arise. That's fine. But when you don't let the mind engage again, like in the previous of the original question, and you see that it's just what's happened because there's a recognition of the fact that I am, which is where the videos are pointing to always. You see? In the fact that I am, fear may come up, or a sensation may come out that the mind labels it fear or anxiety or whatever. That's fine. This is part of the human experience. You know, all these kinds of sensations may come up, but you immediately, when you see those sensations come up, there's a total surrendering to what is recognizing that I know nothing. And with that change of mentality, only with that, the sensation may still there, but the suffering is not. You're resting in what is. And paradoxically, when you rest in what is, which is, again, what this is all pointing to, then those sensations are also observed. You see? And then it's all just like a passing cloud. It's a dance, but you remain as you are. You see? And again, we're not talking about negating anything. That means I'm not saying what to do or not to do in a sense of with the situation. I'm simply pointing to the fact that you are. And in that recognition, notice how the doing happens through you. In other words, if I need to do something about this issue, well, something will be done, but it's going to be done with a different mentality. In other words, the person, with all this physical pain he was having, he noticed how life moves him to go through a doctor, but the mind is trying to make sense of it. You see? So an individual who's unconscious, he will do the same thing, go to the doctor, but he's panicking and whatever the case may be. Someone who is conscious, on the other hand, will still go to the doctor if going to the doctor is what's supposed to happen, but he sees this as just part of the play. Okay, well, there's pain happening. I don't know what it means. It's just what it is. However, I noticed that I would like to see someone who may do some test to see if something is found. I go there. I just watching you're going to the doctor's office, you're reading the magazine, very tranquil, waiting for them to call you. Okay, they call you, and then the doctor give you the results. And if the results were not to be, let's say, positive, because you know who you are, you will go, okay, so what do you suggest we should do? You see? You always live life knowing that no matter what happens to the body is not who you are. And then the mind doesn't have anything to hold on to, doesn't have pieces of the puzzle to play with, or the game to play with. You see? As you notice, we're not in denial of anything. If help is needed, you find yourself seeking it. But the attitude with which you're seeking it is very different, because now it's no longer about me, you see? When there's an identification with the sense of self, everything is about me, what could happen to me, what brings pleasure to me, what I want for me. When there's a recognition that you are, is no longer about me. It's just being. Life is, and you are life. And the interesting thing is that when there's no self-centeredness, then everything seems to be about everyone, not about you, you see? Because suffering is self-centered thinking. You see? That's all suffering is. If there's no center, if there's no self-centered ego, there's no suffering. There's just simply experience. With all these different colors and textures and whatever, but it's just experience. But when the attention goes to the me, you see, which is what happens in here. The question is about me. Look what happened to me. What does it mean to me? What it could happen to, no, nothing. It's just what it is. So life unfolds and you simply are. You rest in that. And that's it. End of story. So anyhow, I hope it served, and as always, May peace permeate the mind so that love can be extended.